The knock came just as the wind howled through the cracked pine trees. The kind of knock that sounded desperate rather than polite.
Help, please, my daughter is sick!
Heavy with
Open the
fear
door, we're
and cold.
freezing! Haste!
And before he even reached the door, Marcus Hale felt something tighten in his chest the way it did when life was about to ask for more than he had left to give. Snow had already begun to creep under the warped edges of the porch, and his small rental cabin in northern Montana felt thinner than ever, as if the walls themselves were tired of holding back the world. Marcus was a widowed single father, barely keeping the lights on, working 2 jobs in a town that forgot men like him the moment the factory gates closed. His hands were rough from construction work, his eyes always scanning the floor for unpaid bills, his heart permanently braced for the next bad surprise. When he opened the door, the cold rushed in with a woman standing there, soaked, shaking, and pale, holding the limp hand of a little girl whose breathing sounded like it might stop at any second. The woman's name was Grace. The child's was Hannah. And the look in Grace's eyes wasn't asking for kindness. It was begging for mercy. In that moment, before logic or fear could speak, Marcus wondered what he would want someone to do if it were his own son gasping in the cold. And he realized the question wasn't hypothetical at all. He let them in without thinking, knowing full well that he didn't have money, answers, or space to spare. The cabin smelled of old wood and cheap coffee, and his own son, Noah, watched quietly from the hallway, his small face already too familiar with hardship. Grace collapsed onto the couch, clutching Hannah, as if the world might steal her away the second she loosened her grip. Marcus wrapped them in spare blankets, turned the heat up despite the overdue bill, and fought the panic rising in his chest. What if this was a mistake? What if this brought trouble he couldn't afford? And yet, what if turning them away was something he'd never forgive himself for? The night stretched long and heavy. Hannah burned with fever, her tiny body trembling in Marcus' arms as he drove through the snow to the nearest emergency clinic, praying the engine would hold and that fate might show mercy just once. The doctor spoke of infection and exhaustion, of days on the road and no proper care. Grace cried silently in the corner, the kind of crying that comes from someone who has already cried too much. Marcus signed papers he didn't understand, knowing he couldn't pay them, knowing tomorrow's problems would be even worse than today's. And yet, feeling something unfamiliar stirring in his chest. A sense that this suffering had meaning beyond numbers and debts, they stayed. Days turned into weeks. Grace insisted on helping around the house despite her own exhaustion, cooking meals that tasted like warmth rather than necessity, folding laundry with a precision that hinted at a life very different from this one. She never spoke much about her past, only that she had been running, not from the law or danger, but from grief so large it had swallowed everything else. Marcus didn't press. He knew what it meant to lose someone and wake up every day feeling like the world had moved on without permission. The town noticed. People always do. Some whispered that Grace was trouble. Others judged Marcus quietly, wondering why a man, who could barely support his own child, would take in strangers. Bills piled higher. His truck broke down. One job cut his hours. Some nights Marcus lay awake staring at the ceiling, asking himself, what kind of father risks his own child's security for people he doesn't even know? And then he would remember Hannah's feverish breath against his neck. Noah reading her stories at night, Grace's eyes softening every time someone showed even the smallest kindness. If you were standing where he stood, would you choose safety, or would you choose compassion and trust the rest to God? The truth came slowly, like dawn breaking through a storm. Marcus noticed Grace making phone calls outside, her voice low and controlled, nothing like the frightened woman who had knocked on his door. A black SUV appeared one afternoon at the end of the dirt road, glossy and out of place like a lie in plain sight. Men in tailored coats stepped out, their faces tense with relief and respect when they saw Grace. The air shifted, heavy with revelation. Grace was not just a tired mother with nowhere to go. She was a billionaire, who had disappeared after losing her husband in a tragic accident. Overwhelmed by public scrutiny, betrayed by people she trusted, desperate to protect her daughter from a world that only saw her wealth and not her pain. Marcus felt foolish, angry, small, all those nights worrying about groceries while she sat on resources beyond his imagination. Shame burned his chest, and for the first time, he wondered if kindness had made him a fool. But Grace's breakdown was immediate and raw, tears pouring as she explained she never meant to deceive him. That money had only ever brought her loss, fear, and isolation. She spoke of hiding, not because she wanted to lie, but because she needed to remember what it felt like to be human again. Hannah recovered fully. The cabin filled with laughter Marcus hadn't heard since his wife passed. Noah grew braver, kinder, as if witnessing compassion had unlocked something inside him. And Grace, for all her wealth, learned something she hadn't known she lost. She learned that safety could exist without guards, that love could show up unannounced on a freezing night. That a poor single father could save her child without asking for anything in return. When it was time for her to leave, Grace tried to give Marcus everything. Money enough to erase his debts, buy a home, secure Noah's future. Marcus accepted only what would keep his son warm and fed, refusing the rest with a quiet dignity that left Grace shaken. Some gifts, he said, were meant to be paid forward, not back. Months later, Marcus found steady work. Noah thrived. The cabin felt less cold. Grace started a foundation in Hannah's name, quietly helping families no one else noticed, honoring the man who taught her that generosity was not measured in dollars, but in choices made when no one is watching. Just before the story ends, ask yourself this and share your thoughts in the comments below. If a stranger knocked on your door in their darkest moment, would you open it? If this story truly touched your heart, reminded you of kindness, second chances, or the quiet power of doing the right thing, please like, comment, share, and subscribe so more stories like this can reach those who need them. Post.